Do you ever feel like your AI is smart, but it never actually knows what's going on inside your business? If you're a solopreneur, you've probably tried using AI to help with your work, but it still sits in a separate app, totally disconnected from where you actually run your business. Sure, tools like ChatGPT can remember a conversation and they can keep context, but that's not the same as having it right inside your workspace. So what you end up doing is rebuilding context inside ChatGPT that's already sitting in your notes, your projects, and your client files, which is completely slowing you down, not to mention taking up the headspace that you need to get better work done. So today I'm going to show you 5 GPTs I use inside Tana every week to run my solo business, all built with my TanaGPT Pro template. By the end, you'll understand how to make AI feel like a natural part of your knowledge system so it works with your context, speeds up your work, and stops feeling like an extra tool you have to go and find. But before we jump in, if you don't have time to watch endless YouTube tutorials and you just want to build a high-performing digital workspace that works harder than you do, then check out my Tana Fast Track course. It will get you up and running in Tana, well, fast. First, you'll learn all the fundamentals in just about an hour. Next, you'll choose from our 6 core workflow templates that are simple, plug and play. There's not 86 super tags to deal with. You choose what templates you need to customize your workflow. You also have our TFT community to ask questions and get direct help from me, plus a load of other resources. Over 500 people have already taken Tana Fast Track and loved it. So if you want to get on the fast track, I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, before we dive into building our AI workspace in Tana, let's quickly cover what a custom GPT actually is. So while regular ChatGPT is like this general assistant that can help with almost anything, a custom GPT is trained with specific instructions and loaded with knowledge to be really good at one thing. And the beauty of that is instead of having to explain what you want over and over again, a custom GPT already knows your preferences, it has access to all the relevant information, and it's ready to help exactly the way you need it to help. Now, you can set up custom GPTs in any AI tool, but having them directly in Tana means that you can connect them to your actual work. Think your projects, your notes, your meetings. Like, you get instant context without having to explain or download or upload anything to external tools. So your AI workflows become part of your knowledge system rather than sitting separately from it. To the 5 GPTs. The first one is my creative co-pilot, and this is my ride or die GPT. So I use it for all sorts of writing and developing ideas. And it really is like if I were going to hire a human ghostwriter, this GPT has everything that they would need to know. My writing style, my values, my business context, my products, my content pillars, my audience, everything is baked into this GPT, so it's so easy to use. So because this GPT can do all sorts of things, I use it to help me develop ideas. I also use it to help me actually draft content, and then I help it with kind of like the last 10% of content, which is kind of like, help me write this CTA or do this or that. So typically, this is how I would use it, right? So when it loads, it says, how can I help? And then this one in particular, I was like, can you write a CTA for my newsletter, right? I gave it some different examples of like ones that I had written before. And then what I did was, because I can pull from Tana, I had the landing page of my AI Creative Co-Pilot Masterclass. So I just pulled it in here and it then can use that as context. So having this in Tana means that I can pull in any note for context, as well as having the context kind of built into the custom GPT. And so then it kind of like spits out CTA, right? And because it knows my products, because it knows how I write, all of that kind of context is already built in and it's pretty good to go. So I said, yep, the alternative is better. And then I just gave it some extra kind of like instructions. I don't want to focus on content. And then I got the revised versions and then I put that into my newsletter for the week. So let me show you how this is actually set up. So with TanaGPT Pro, you can create a GPT really easily without having to go into any custom commands or create anything. All you have to do is fill out a couple of fields. So if we have a look here, these are my custom instructions for my Creative Copilot. Now I've kind of developed this over probably about a year now. So I have the purpose of what it's supposed to do. There's some tone and style about how it should interact with me, kind of the role, and then I have specific tasks. So if we open this up, ghostwriting, brainstorming, creating optimized content assets, repurposing. So kind of just like a list of things that it does. Then I have some broad abilities. Okay, so it's going to act as my kind of creative and strategic thought partner. So for me, a ghostwriter, or particularly my creative co-pilot, is not there to actually just always write for me. Sometimes just needs to like help me in the process. So there's all of that. And we've also got kind of some context in there. And I'll talk about context in a sec. There's some constraints. Okay, so don't do this, don't do that. Always ask me questions one at a time, those kinds of things. And then just some ethical guidelines, right? So when we're talking about custom GPTs, they always have a custom instruction, and then they have knowledge context. Okay, so here is where I load up all the different knowledge context that is going to help my GPT kind of understand. And so I tag all of these as a context pack in Tana. So if something changes, like if my audience changes or a content pillar changes, I can quickly change these and it updates automatically because these are references here. So I have my creative DNA doc. Now I have a course, the Creative Co-Pilot Masterclass, and it shows you how to create a DNA doc like this. So this was like a real unlock for me when it came to using AI to help me kind of in my content process, because a lot of people just load up like their writing style, whereas I actually have all of these different things that I put in. So not just my writing style, but like common words and phrases I use, my writing personality. One of the biggest things that I find helps my GPT like actually write like I do is actually feeding it my core values. When like think about when you write things, it's not necessarily just your writing style, it's actually how you think and how you like put ideas together. And so these are all the things that I kind of give it as my like creative DNA. So, and how I just thought about that was if a ghostwriter needed to know how I wrote, what would I give them? Right? That's my creative DNA. I also then load up my content pillars. So this is like my positioning statement, my audience, and all the like, content pillars that I write and I speak about. There's different content types. So sometimes I want it to write an atomic essay. I've got this other framework that's like a hybrid PKM article. So when I load those up, I know that it knows what I'm talking about. And then it's got all sorts of information about my product and my business. Okay, and this is like a random one that I just added in because I was working on something in particular, so I added it in there. But you can see how you can like just bring these in from different parts of Tana, and then suddenly all of that works. And then all I have to do to run this Copilot, because if we have a look here, this is how kind of a little like behind the scenes how it works, is that this is just an agent and it's just pulling from the custom instructions and the knowledge docs. And so that works kind of like whichever GPT that you are in, it's pulling from your custom instructions and your GPT knowledge inside that. So I literally never have to go into configure any custom commands. I just fill in those two fields and then hit launch GPT and my Creative Copilot is ready to go. So my Creative Copilot is like my permanent writing partner. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some GPTs are just like temporary specialists that you create for specific purposes. And these next two are just that. So this next GPT is my marketing campaign GPT. And when I'm running a marketing campaign, like a live workshop or a launch, I don't want to have to keep explaining the campaign every time I want to write something new. So I used to use my Creative Copilot for this, but even that meant that I had to keep feeding it context all the time. Like, what's the workshop about? When is it? Who's it for? So I build these specific GPTs if I'm working on a very specific launch and I just want to be able to quickly create content around it. So this is a specific GPT that I built for a workshop that I've got coming up, and it's loaded up with all of the details of that workshop. So rather than kind of like having to always explain what it is, I can say things like this. I want to post a quick post in my Tana Fast Track community inviting people to the workshop, and I just I still give it some context, like these people are already in my world, doesn't have to be too promotional, And so then it writes the whole post for me with details, links, all of that kind of thing, and I can just copy and paste it. So these work really well, and I just love just being able to not have to explain myself constantly. Okay, so how this one is set up, it's meant to just be kind of like a transient one. So it doesn't need, amazing custom instructions. These ones are pretty simple. It's the knowledge context that is the most important, right? So here, what I've got is my creative DNA doc is still here, so it knows how to write like me. I've got the landing page, okay, which I write all of my things in Tana, so I can just bring these in really quickly. And it's got all the launch emails that I already wrote, okay? And so by having all of that context, it just knows straight away kind of like how to position this. For most of my marketing campaigns, I use my creative Co-Pilot, but then as the campaign goes, it's like, oh, actually, I need to write that post for Tana Fast Track, or I just want to, quickly put a post out on Twitter or Substack. For that, I can just easily come in here and like pump that out really quickly and it's done. This releases me from a lot of headspace, especially in marketing, because so many times you think, oh my gosh, I've got to sit down and write that post or sit down and write that email. But this particular kind of GPT makes it so much easier. And so I can just like brain dump my idea and it knows what I'm talking about and it just gets it out. All right, so this next one is very similar to a marketing one, except it's for specific projects that I'm working on. So when I'm working on a project with a client, I want a GPT that knows all the moving parts. So for each project, I just create a temporary GPT. So I load it with my past meeting transcripts, any notes I've made, whatever docs I'm building with the client, and then I can just ask quick questions as I go. So this is a very typical one where I'm working on a build with a client and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to build this out. What did Damien say about marketing the properties? I get a list of things that he asked, and then I was like, oh, can you be a bit more specific? And then, what specific marketing assets? Did he talk about blog posts? So I can just like have these conversations, and I do just like literally have this open as well as like as I'm building, so that I can just kind of like quickly ask questions as I'm building things out. It's really, really helpful. So the way I set up this project GPT is it's got some custom instructions here. Okay, so the purpose is designed to assist with building a custom Tana workspace, and I just reuse this for every new project that I have. So it's got a role, tone and style, specific tasks. Okay, so it's got to recall and summarize project specific information. It's going to remind me how certain workflows or structures were discussed, suggest naming conventions, act as a sounding board, all that kind of thing. It's got some just broad abilities, so help maintain project, provide lightweight support, and then also it has some constraints, okay? And then how I build the knowledge context on this one is that I load up my actual client project, okay? So that's got all of the kind of details of the project inside. So this is the other cool thing about having your GPTs in Tana is that you can add a live search into the GPT knowledge context. So what happens here is that anything that I tag as belonging to the workflow build, okay, this project, I then just create a search for this. So basically it's searching for anything that is a doc or a meeting that the related project is this particular project. And so this auto updates, right? So there's a meeting in here, there's a check-in template that Susie sent me, there's the actual like the workspace build that I presented to her. So that means that anytime I add a note or a meeting that's related to that project goes into that live search, and this GPT gets automatically updated every single time I do that. Okay, so far we've covered the creative and project work, but here's where GPTs become really powerful for knowledge professionals when they actually can help you think and reflect. So this next one is my monthly business wrap. And I created this GPT because I wanted to get better at reflecting on my own business, but I'm actually terrible at remembering what happened in any given month. So this GPT helps me solve that by combining my brain dump with actual data. So this is a typical kind of way that I would use this is that I just whip out Whisperflow and start just brain dumping my whole month. And as you can see, it's pretty long. I think I probably talked for about 10 minutes, just all the things throughout the month that happened, anything that I can remember, stats, sales breakdown, all of that kind of thing. And what it does is it will ask me kind of some clarifying questions, and then it ends up creating like a business breakdown, right? And then what I do from there is I actually then feed it my journal logs, or it already has kind of my journal logs in there. And I ask it to give me some blind spots because often I can be quite rosy with, especially if I end the month on a high. So just like having it be able to look through all of my journal logs and actually give me realistic view of what my month is like really, really good. All right. So the way that this one is set up is there's some custom instructions in here. Okay. Letting it know what its purpose is, what its role, the specific tasks. Okay, so it accepts a voice note, It extracts the meaningful content. It asks open-ended questions. It knows to like prompt one question at a time, those kinds of things. And so then it also has my knowledge context. So it's got details about my products and my business. So it knows who I am, my content pillars and framework. It's got the monthly wrap from last month, just so it kind of can compare. And then it also has my last month's journal logs, which I log in Tana. So it's got some really good knowledge context that it can start to really understand me and be able to give me a great kind of monthly business wrap up. But the GPT that's probably changed my business the most is this last one, because it solves one of the fundamental challenges that every knowledge professional faces. And it's my Weekly Insights Extractor. So it's probably one of my favorite GPTs. And if you're a knowledge worker like me, this concept is going to change everything for you. So the idea is simple. The work is the knowledge, right? So the work that you do every day should be creating knowledge for you. But most of us do our knowledge work on one side, and then we stress about creating content, preparing workshops, creating products on the other side. So this saves all of that. All right, so this one is basically starts really simple. All I say is start the extraction for the week. And what it's got behind the scenes is all of my journal logs, all of my notes, any meetings that I've had, everything is kind of loaded in. And so I design it to then extract a whole lot of different things. So it extracts different insights from all of my notes and meetings. So these insights I can then go on and tag and kind of use as posts. I can use them in different products or offers or that kind of thing. So they're kind of like insights, little pieces of knowledge that I've collected. I've got lessons learned. So I find that pulling out lessons means that I can then use those in posts. I can use those as I'm creating workshops or if I'm doing presentations or things like that. They work really good as kind of like lessons and stories. I've got specific content ideas. Okay, so I can tag these and put them into my content back really easily. And they all come from things I've actually been thinking, been writing about, been speaking about with clients, and so they end up being really relevant. It also pulls out IP opportunities. So anytime that I talk about something that could be part of my IP, right? A method, a concept, a methodology, all of that kind of thing. And then also stories. So these work really well in posts, and I have a whole database where I actually pull in all of the stories that I could possibly then use in a presentation or in content or in offers or marketing or anything like that. So this is like seriously my favorite. And how this works is very simple. Again, I've just got a custom instruction here, and then I pull out, and this custom instruction is pretty detailed. Okay, so it's kind of got the scope here where it's like analyze the notes, identify these 5 things. Okay, and then it's got some broad abilities and then the constraints. But the knowledge context is really where this lands, right? So I pull in all of my last week's micro journals. So how I work kind of day to day, I'm just always getting things out of my head, right? So my micro journals are just little kind of like things that I've had to get out of my head, right? So I was sick last week and I didn't get much done, or sometimes it could be like, hey, I just finished a great meeting with a client and I just like write something about it. So it's just like all day I'm just getting stuff out of my head, right? And then my micro journals. I also then have Spark Notes. So these are like things that more kind of like knowledge things that I'm getting out of my head. Okay, so I've got all of those there. And then I also have my content pillars so that it knows to only kind of pick out things that are going to be in line with what I teach. And then it's also just got kind of like examples. So I find like one of the best things about GPTs that you could do is feed it bad and good examples. And then I find it works really well. So kind of just says like, well, what should a story be? So it shouldn't be kind of like something like this. It should be more kind of like conversational. And then also the content extraction. So how I like content ideas to be formatted that make it easy for me. And this really is the holy grail for knowledge professionals. So instead of feeling like you're constantly creating from scratch, what you're doing is you're building a compounding knowledge base from the work that you're already doing, right? Your daily work becomes your content pipeline, workshop and presentation material, intellectual property, all of that kind of thing. So that's a look inside of how I actually use GPTs in my business, not as a one-off prompt or external tool, but embedded parts of my workflow inside Tana. The biggest shift here is moving from AI as something you go and use to something that's already there, already connected to your work, and ready to help the moment you need it. If you want to build your own GPTs like this, the TanaGPT Pro template makes it super easy to set up. So I'll leave a link below if you want to check it out. And now, speaking of AI workflows in Tana, I actually covered another powerful approach in a video about my favorite AI prompts for working with my notes. So if you want to see more ways to make AI work seamlessly with your knowledge system, check it out. And if this approach resonates with you, hit subscribe so you can see more ideas on building AI into your knowledge systems. And drop a comment and let me know which of these GPTs you'd find most useful in your own work.